Cover Up, Chapter 19, Touchdown. Stevie was half hoping they would get a voicemail on Don Meeker's cell phone, although Kelleher had already said that if they did, they would have to call Dewey Blanton, the Dream's PR guy, who had been so helpful to Stevie earlier in the week. Stevie knew he was right. There was no need, as it turned out. Meeker picked up on the second ring. "Donald Meeker," he said. "Mr. Meeker," Kelleher said, intentionally being formal. Stevie knew because of the gravity of the situation. "This is Bobby Kelleher. I'm here with Steve Thomas and Susan Carol Anderson." He had put the call on speaker when dialing because he knew that, unlike Goodell, courtesy would be pointless. "What the hell could you three possibly want?" Meeker said. "How'd you get this number?" "You gave it to me the other night, sir," Susan Carol said, jumping in. "I'll have it changed about 5 minutes from now," Meeker said. "All well and good," Kelleher said, "but we're calling you as a courtesy because Steve and Susan Carol have written a story that is going to appear in tomorrow's Washington Herald, which will be on the streets in about 3 hours. I'm about to read you the first few paragraphs and let you comment, then we'll be done." "We'll be done when I say we're done," Meeker said. "That's fine," Kelleher said. He began to read. He was 2 paragraphs in when Meeker began screaming, Why, you little... Are you kidding me? I will sue your asses for so much money. I'll not only own the paper, I'll own you, your families, and the rest of your lives. No way you can prove a word of that, you lying little..." Stevie had heard a fair amount of profanity at school, but nothing quite like this. Kelleher's voice was soft and calm as Meeker's was shrieky and out of control. "Mr. Meeker, I'm going to remind you that we're on the record and on tape, which is legal since this call is not across state lines. I will then point you out to the phrase, 'has obtained documents.' We've got the test results. We've got not 1 source, but 3. So if you want to leave your profane rant as your comment, that's fine, but be aware of what you're dealing with here." There was silence for a moment. "When exactly are you publishing this crap?" "The first edition of the Sunday papers will be out in a little less than 3 hours. The Herald will publish a bulletin alerting people to the story on its website at 8 o'clock. That means I have 90 minutes to get a court order stopping you." "Good luck." You, Kelleher, and your 2 little friends, too. I'll take you all down. I guarantee it." "Thanks for your time, Don." The phone clicked on the word 4. Stevie looked at Kelleher. "Can he get a court order?" "On what grounds?" Kelleher said. "Even if he could find a judge on a Saturday night, no one can order us not to publish a story unless national security is at stake. The only one whose security is at stake here is Meeker." "And ours," Susan Carol said, "at least judging by his tone." "Don't worry," Kelleher said. "We'll make sure there are plenty of people around you at all times." "Okay," Kelleher continued. "We need to phone these quotes in for the story. It'll be closing on the desk in about 15 minutes. So, first person to dig a printable quote out of what Meeker just said wins a prize." When neither Stevie or Susan Carol laughed, Bobby studied the 2 of them. "Are you okay?" They both nodded. "Good," he said, picking up the phone, "because there's no turning back now." Once Kelleher had phoned in the quotes from Goodell and Meeker, telling the desk where to put them in the story, they decided they were entitled to a fast trip to St. Elmo's. They called Mike D'Angelo, the one who said he had 1 table left that could handle them if they came over right away. "Perfect," Kelleher said. "We should have just enough time to eat and get back here before the story breaks. I want you both under wraps by 8. They all put on their coats, but before they left, Bobby put the drug test results back in their envelope and slipped them in his pocket. "We should keep these with us at all times." The sun was down, and the air had that pre-snow feel again when they walked outside. They decided to take a cab to save time and to stay warm. The restaurant was, of course, packed. D'Angelo looked a little tired. "It's a great week having the whole world in town," he said as he walked them to a booth. "But I can't say I'll be sad when everybody leaves." "You've probably done enough business that you can shut down for a month," Kelleher said. D'Angelo smiled. "More like a year? The amount of money some people spend is mind-boggling." The food was delicious, but Stevie noticed that Susan Carol wasn't eating much. "Nervous?" he said. "Yes," she said, "but I'm not sure why. We know the story is right." "Perfectly natural," Tamara said. "You've written a very, very explosive story that the people accused have to try to deny. They have to try to make you and Stevie the bad guys. Everything will be fine in the end, but they're going to take some shots at you, and you know it's coming." Kelleher's phone rang. He looked at the screen, and then at Tamara. "It's Watkins," he said. "Hoo boy," Tamara said as Bobby flipped open the phone. "Who is Watkins?" Stevie whispered. "He's the executive editor of the paper," Tamara said. "He doesn't call a reporter unless he's unhappy about something." Watkins was talking, and Kelleher was listening. "Mr. Watkins, the story couldn't be more solid," Kelleher said finally. "We have test results in hand, and they were given to us by one of the team's doctors." There was a pause while Watkins talked some more. "What would you expect him to say? That's his MO anyway, trying to intimidate people." Stevie could now hear Watkins' voice coming through the phone. "No, sir, I'm not saying you can be intimidated. I'm saying that's what Don Meeker does." Watkins talked some more. "Put it this way," Kelleher said in response. "I'd trust them with my job and my reputation. That's what we're talking about, right?" He paused again. "Yes, sir, I understand, and I'm comfortable with that." He closed the phone. "Wind getting a little cold feet after a call from little Donnie?" Tamara asked. "The problem with Watkins is he's more one of them than he is one of us," Kelleher said. "What's that mean?" Susan Carroll asked. "He sees himself as part of the Washington elite. He likes to run with the rich and the famous a lot more than any of his reporters, so when Meeker calls screaming that his reporters are unfairly trying to do him in, Watkins would be inclined to listen." "But he's running the story, right?" "He's running it, but he said if one word is wrong, he'll expect my resignation." "Sounds like a wonderful guy to work for," Susan Carroll said. "A peach," Kelleher said. "A real Georgetown peach." "Don't you mean Georgia peach?" Susan Carroll said. "No, I meant Georgetown peach. Spoiled and rotten. All you need to know about the guy is that he loves sitting in Dan Snyder's box at Redskin games." "I bet he won't be sitting there much after next season after this story," Stevie said. "I bet he's thinking the exact same thing," Kelleher said. "Come on, let's get out of here. It's coming up on 8 o'clock. They walked back to the hotel, even though it was cold, because Tamara pointed out they probably weren't going to get much chance to go out the next day once the story broke. When they walked into the lobby, Stevie was immediately blinded by the lights of a TV camera. "Uh-oh," Kelleher said. "We didn't get back here soon enough." Stevie counted at least half a dozen camera crews and, from what he could see, a number of radio reporters coming in their direction. He looked at his watch. It was 8:15. Could the news have traveled that quickly? "Steve! Susan Carroll!" He heard several voices calling. Kelleher put his arms around both of them. "All you say is, we're going to let the story speak for itself. Okay?" he said. They nodded. The cameras rushed towards them. "Are the two of you aware that Don Meeker has put out a statement categorically denying the charges in your story?" someone in the crowd said as the cameras and lights shone on them. Steve was trying to put on some semblance of a poker face when he heard Susan Carroll respond coolly. "What would you expect him to say? We'll just let the story speak for itself." "Are you aware he'll sue the paper and the two of you?" someone else asked. Susan Carroll smiled this time. "As I said before, would you expect anything different from Mr. Meeker?" Stevie noticed his legs were shaking. Susan Carroll's voice could not have been calmer. "So you still say that 5 dreams tested positive for HGH and Meeker is covering it up?" another voice said. This time, Susan Carroll looked disgusted. "Why in the world would we write a story if we weren't 100% sure it was true?" Stevie heard Kelleher's voice behind him. "Okay, guys, I think you've got what you need. We're going now." "Who died and put you in charge, Kelleher?" someone holding an ESPN microphone said. "No one, but I'm their editor on this, and I'm responsible for them." He smiled at the guy with the microphone, whom Stevie had seen before but didn't recognize. "I can't wait to see how you guys somehow take credit for this story." He and Tamara began pushing Stevie and Susan Carroll in the direction of the elevators. People were still shouting questions. It reminded Stevie of something out of a movie. He heard one voice shout, "You kids better have it right!" That made him shudder. "Why would they doubt us like that?" he said, once they were safely at the elevator bank and the horde had turned away. "Because they didn't break the story," Kelleher said. "It happens all the time. Be prepared. It will be like this all day tomorrow." Stevie took a deep breath. Judging by the last 10 minutes, tomorrow was going to be a very long day. Kelleher's cell phone rang incessantly for the next couple of hours. He answered it a couple times when he saw a number or a name he recognized. The story's right," he kept repeating. "Read it. They've got it nailed." They were all in Mark Mask's room, figuring that was the safest place for a while since no one was apt to be looking for them in the room of a Washington Post reporter. Bobby and Tamara agreed that Susan Carroll should stay with Tamara in their room, and Bobby and Stevie could stay with Mark, who had graciously offered to share his room with colleagues in need. Stevie answered his phone twice. The first time it was for his parents, saying they were being bombarded with calls from people wanting to know how to get in touch with him. Meet the Press called, his dad said. They're ready to replan their whole show if you and Susan Carroll will come on in the morning. What'd you tell them? Stevie asked. I told them my sense was you wanted the story to stand on its own merit. Perfect. We want to lay as low as possible tomorrow. That might not be easy. I know. Susan Carroll fielded a similar call from her father, and she chose not to answer a couple of calls, each from Tal Vincent and Mike Shoup at USTV, but she did take the call from Jamie Whitsitt. Susan Carroll! Dude, what a story! No wonder I haven't seen you for a while. You should lay low, though. Reporters are totally staked out in the hotel lobby, and Tal's about ready to pop a blood vessel. Thanks for the warning, Jamie, Susan Carroll replied. She listened for a minute more, laughed, then clicked off. What did he say? Stevie asked. He said, Rock on, dude. Stevie's next call was from Sean McManus. Stevie was afraid for a moment that he was going to be upset Stevie hadn't given the story to CBS. If he was, he didn't mention it. We can't ignore the story, even though I'm sure the league would like us to, he said to Stevie. Don Meeker is going to come on the pregame show to give his side. I'd like you and Susan Carroll to come on and give yours. Stevie, with Meeker? Stevie asked. McManus laughed. Absolutely not. For one thing, Meeker insisted on coming on alone. For another, we don't want a riot on our hands. Stevie asked McManus to hang on for a moment, and he explained the situation to Kelleher. That's the one you should do, Kelleher said. Meeker's going to spend all day shooting you guys down. That's the spot to respond. Plus, you owe it to CBS. Tell Sean there's just one condition. What's that? You go on after Meeker. Stevie nodded. McManus agreed. What we'll do is read the basics of the story on air and let Meeker respond. We'll play you the tape of what he says, and you can respond to it. What time do we do this? Stevie asked. Meeker's coming to our compound at 3 o'clock, McManus said. So I need both of you to come at 4 so we'll have time to get you set up to tape with Jim. Nance? Stevie asked. Doesn't James Brown host the pregame show? He does, but this is a huge story and Jim's our #1 guy. In fact, given the hard news implications, I may bring Bob Schiffer in to do the interview. We're still talking about it. Okay, Stevie said. I guess we'll see you at 4. Sounds good, McManus said. Stevie thought he was about to hang up, and then he apparently had another thought. Stevie? Yes? This is a really bad thing for the NFL if it's true. We're partners with the NFL. I am sure you understand that. I do. We're obligated to be skeptical. I understand. I know you do, but I want you to know something. What? I hope you've got it right. Stevie nodded, even though McManus couldn't see him nodding. Mr. McManus, he said, realizing he couldn't be seen. Yes. We've got it right.